Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb. And we are going to be wrapping up Cult Movie Month. We're going to be talking about an all-time classic in Scarface. But before we get to that, Caleb, what have you been watching?
Football.
I was going to say college football and playing
Football.
college football.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, because that last weekend was week 0, which for anyone who doesn't follow sports, that completely doesn't make sense, and I acknowledge that. Um, but they had some good ones for that first weekend, and so yeah, I haven't really been watching anything else. I mean, I watched the movies for this week. I watched and then I watched some Bob's Burgers. So Bob's
Rock.
Burgers just is a really great, easy one to put on right before crashing for bed.
Good
So
background show.
yeah, I was talking to a coworker about it and everything, and I feel like that's what most animated shows are good for. I mean, you've got
Yeah,
those good like comedy shows too. Like you could have like New Girl. My wife would usually do it with have like Friends on
Friends,
and
yeah.
things, or
How I
maybe
Met Your Mother is another one like that.
yeah, I was just gonna mention that, but I feel like animated shows are kind of um top
Perfect for
tier,
that.
yeah, content for that. So,
Yeah, I agree.
but
Yeah, and the show I was watching like that is King of the Hill,
mhm.
and I finished that again. I missed the last few episodes. I think I fell asleep on the couch, but I've seen them plenty of times, so I didn't go back. Um, I watched a handful of movies. I watched the new Nicolas Cage like horror thriller Long Legs,
Oh, okay.
and that was pretty decent. It gave me a lot of Silence of the Lambs feels to it.
Oh,
But
interesting.
I do feel like the trailer kind of ruined the movie because the trailer made the movie seem way creepier than what it was.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, and it kind of, I don't know, the ending really didn't hit home for me. But it was a solid watch. Like it was well acted and well done. So if you guys want to check that one out, go for it. Another newer movie, I watched Inside Out 2, which my 6-year-old told me that it's the worst movie ever. She saw it in the theater, didn't like the ending because like the girl has an anxiety attack and she doesn't like that. I think it like scared her or something.
Yeah.
So I watched it. I thought it was pretty good. I liked it better than the first one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I watched the one of the newer WWE Legends shows on A&E. I watched the one about Rob Van Dam. He was always one of my favorite wrestlers, so it was pretty good watch. Um, Fellow guy from Michigan.
Rock.
Um, I watched that, and then also guys from Michigan. I watched part of the one about the Steiner brothers,
Okay.
University of Michigan alumni. I fell asleep during that one. My sleep schedule's been way out of whack. Like I haven't felt good, and then my youngest didn't sleep last night, basically. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
I had a
pretty
weird night.
rough.
I had a weird week too because I feel like I didn't get to sleep until about 3 o'clock each night,
Yeah,
which is later than normal for me. But one night was totally because I had nachos from this local taco place, and
tore you up.
their chorizo is good, but it tore me up. I was
Oh
just like
man,
yeah, it kept me up for a good hour and a half later than I was planning.
Caleb was shooting hot snakes. Oh man. Yeah, so with me barely sleeping, I watched more stuff. I watched the couple of those Untold series documentaries on Netflix. I watched the sign stealing one.
Okay.
I'm just so tired of that stupid story. Like, can we just get past it?
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting to hear like um Stallion's side of the story, I guess.
Hmm.
But I also watched the one that was the murder of Steve McNair, the former quarterback for the Titans and the Ravens.
Okay.
That was pretty good. It was some of the stuff I didn't know in that. But and then the last thing, I started watching Family Matters. Like I haven't watched that and I don't even know how long. And it's kind of funny, like the first season, like there's like Urkel doesn't come along until episode 12.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more like just a your typical feel good 80s family sitcom. And I'm like, man, I kind of like this. Like, it's kind of crazy how far that show jumped the shark. Like when Urkel's going into space and there's a robot Urkel and
Yeah.
all that kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. I've watched, I think, 3 episodes tonight. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, so I guess we could probably move on into Scarface. So let's do it. Scarface is from 1983 and is directed by Brian De Palma. The plot is Miami in the 1980s. A determined criminal-minded Cuban immigrant becomes the biggest drug smuggler in Florida and is eventually undone by his own drug addiction. The cast, we got Al Pacino as Tony Montana, Michelle Pfeiffer as Elvira Hancock, Stephen Bauer as Manny Rivera, Mary Elizabeth Mas Mastrantonio
Sure.
as Gina Montana, Robert Loggia. That's
R.
R as in Robert Loggia. Oh, as in oh my God. As Frank Lopez. Miriam Colon as Mama Montana. This movie I've seen quite a few times. Um, I mean, if you had cable at any point, you've seen this movie. It's on quite a bit. At least it was back in like the mid 2000s.
Yeah. Back when everybody was, talking about it on the Cribs MTV show, like we
Yes.
talked about.
Yeah, how it's playing in the background of every single rapper's crib on MTV Cribs.
Yeah.
And having posters of it.
Yep. I think this is my fourth or fifth time watching all the way through. Like I haven't seen it a ton of times. I will openly admit I forgot how excellent of a movie this was.
Yeah, it's really good.
So,
Um, so many aspects of it are really good. I've
mhm.
seen it probably, if I had to ballpark it, maybe 10 or 15 times.
Okay.
This is the first time I've watched it in a couple years, but I think I watched it maybe not last year, but 2 years ago,
Hmm.
I think. But yeah, there's pretty much every aspect of this movie's good. Like the acting's good, the soundtrack's good, cinematography's good. The
Music's
pacing
good.
is pretty decent, and it's like a 3 hour movie, but the pacing's pretty decent.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours 45. Yeah, I was gonna say like when I started it, um, did I watch it over 2 nights? I can't remember. But when I started it, I was like, oh my gosh, another 2 hour and 45 minute. Because how long was Blues Brothers? About the same?
Oh, right around there, at least like 2.5, I think. I think it was like 2:39.
Yeah, but this experience was absolutely different. Like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Um, it's one of those movies that you pick up on different things every time you see it too,
Hmm.
and just like the subtle stuff in it. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of Brian De Palma movies that are kind of like that. Um, he just has like a certain like slickness and style and attention to detail for
Hmm.
things.
I I don't want to give any too much away, but I have a hard time thinking of this movie and having anything come to mind on what could be done better.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, I mean, not like I said, not giving my rating away, but I mean, I can't imagine anyone other than Al Pacino being Tony Montana, and all the acting performances were great. And, you know, usually we have that conversation, like we already said, where once you get a movie that's over 2 hours, you're like really pushing it. But this
Yeah.
one, like everything, I think there was only one scene that I kind of thought to myself on being like, I don't think that really added anything. And that was the scene where Tony and Manny were at the beach by the pool
Yeah.
and
Manny
Manny
trying to
tried
pick up women.
yeah, Manny tried to pick up that one chick. And really and it wasn't even bad though. Like I could tell the purpose behind it was to be like, what is the mindset of these guys? You know, Tony kind of went on his whole little thing like, you know, you first you have to get like the
The
money, then you
money.
get the power, and then you get the women.
Yeah.
And then Manny was just like, you know, blah, blah. So it was really kind of like an insight into the differences of their perspectives and mindsets.
Hmm.
So you got something out of it, but also at the same time, like it was kind of eh. I would probably say out of the whole film, that was the one scene that was um could be debatable on if it was needed in the movie, but it still added to it.
Yeah. That and he goes to the club like 5 times.
Yeah.
That
Well,
one club. I mean, a couple of them made sense. Like that's kind of where he met Frank.
hmm
And then he dances with Elvira. And then the other one's when he gets shot at. So those make sense. But I feel like there's one in between there where it's just like, do we really need that?
yeah. There were several times in the club, so now I can't remember how many times specifically it was.
Yeah. Which I know you're probably thinking this too when you're watching this. Um dude, Grand Theft Auto Vice City's
Yeah.
like borrowed heavily from this movie.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I knew it, and I was actually gonna bring that up on being like how excellent Grand Theft Auto Vice City was.
Yeah.
And it's primarily because of this movie. I mean, the guy's mansion was based off of it, the club was based off of it, a lot of the missions were based off of it. I mean,
There's that one apartment building you go into and there's a chainsaw and like the bathtub's all bloody.
oh yeah, yep.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's Grand Theft Auto Vice City was a great video game because of Scarface.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was I think it probably still is my favorite of all the Grand Theft Auto games.
I think so too. I mean, the newer ones have been nice because of how big and immersive they have been, but Vice
Yeah.
City was just like, I mean, it was just too perfect, you know?
Yeah, and San Andreas was great too because then he could swim.
Yeah.
He didn't just instantly die if he fell into water. But um yeah, I mean, like you said, there really wasn't much negative with this movie. Um really the only thing I had, and it was like just nitpicky stuff, was that it's got a long run time, but I feel like it's paced pretty well.
hmm
But still, you're gonna have to set aside nearly 3 hours to watch this movie,
Yeah.
unless you
hmm
watch it in parts, which
Yep.
is kind of what I did. But um, and then the other thing I had is the weird sexual tension that was between Tony and his sister. It's
Yes.
just weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that like you could dive into that all on its own on
Yeah,
how that is because it is that Tony wanting to protect his sister from, you know, getting into the lifestyle that he has, or like, is there something more,
yeah,
like something sexual there? Like, I don't think so personally. Like, um, I think it was something with him not wanting her to be like him, but it was okay for him to be the way he was, which is really, you know, contradictory, but
yeah,
you know, if you're the type of person that he is, you can find a way to justify it. So,
yeah. The double standard,
hmm
basically. Um, one of the things I thought, you know, we first have to say that Al Pacino is amazing in this movie.
oh yeah,
For an Italian guy to pull off a Cuban guy so well, and just be menacing and likable at the same time.
Mhm.
And, aside from Pacino being in it, the other thing I thought was really great was the camera work. There's a scene where Manny's like walking into that refugee camp towards the beginning,
Mhm.
and he's like going to find Tony, and Tony's playing basketball, and like it follows Manny for probably like 30 yards, like the camera does. While he's walking in, you kind of get like the scope of the place that they're in, and he goes to find Tony. And the camera starts off low, goes up a little bit higher, and it's like right behind him. And then you can kind of it pulls out a little bit, and you can see like all the people in the one area.
Yeah.
Like that was really well done.
Mhm.
Some of the stuff at the end is really well done too, and just the different angles and stuff they use in this movie, like
Yeah.
it makes it more immersive.
Oh yeah, the filmography was great.
Yeah, and I thought, we kind of touched about on the music and stuff. Just even a score for it is really good, and then we
Mhm.
get um some really good like 80s songs, and they're not like super popular 80s songs. They're some of them are a little more obscure.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get the awesome montage song, "Push It to the Limit," which is amazing, and it's popped up in a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean, well, that was so, I mean, that's an interesting thing to point out and everything is that montage because it really kind of speeds up the movie a little bit.
yeah,
So,
it really helped with the pacing because just when you think the movie's like a little bit slow and apart, then you get that montage and it really moves things along and it like accelerates Tony's like dive into being a lunatic, just being completely unhinged.
oh yeah. Well, yeah, that was the thing too, because like you said, for part of the movie, he was so likable, but then he became a total jerk.
Yeah, paranoid jerk.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, there's the amount of that to be said about his drug use and everything, but still, like, I don't know. It's just it was a little bit crazy to me on being like, I feel like when you're younger and you're watching this movie, you're like, oh yeah, Tony Montana, just did whatever he wanted to do and took himself to the top and got whatever he wanted to. He took the world, blah blah blah. And then you watch it when you're older and you're just like, man, he's such an idiot because he was so smart and then he became so stupid.
Yeah. Well, he got super into coke, and
Yeah.
that was pretty much his ruin. He got all paranoid and everything. Much the same in Goodfellas when Ray Liotta's character is like blasted off coke the whole time,
Yeah.
and that's when things start blowing up in his face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it even kind of started before he really got into that because he started going after his boss's girl.
Yeah,
And at that point, you're just kind of like, okay, well, he's relatively stupid.
yeah. Like, yeah, this dude's connected.
Yeah.
uh, um, I guess just usually we talk about some great scenes, and there's quite a bit of them in this movie, so I kind of highlighted some of them. Um, and funny lines. This movie's got a fair amount of humor in it too, even though it's more of a serious movie. Uh, Towards the beginning when they're doing like their interviews with the um like the immigration people,
Mm-hmm.
and Tony meets up with um Manny after, and he's like, "How'd you do?" And he's like, "Why I." He's like, "I told him what you told me, that I'm in sanitation." Sanitation? I told you to say you were in a sanitarium. Like that part made me laugh. He's like, I told him to say that you were in a sanitarium and that you got let out.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that opening scene.
Yeah,
Like I remembered the camp, but I forgot about like kind of the interview part of it.
yeah,
And I kind of forgot about how they gave historical context too about what was going on.
yeah, yeah. There's like that whole crawling thing at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. And I was like,
You know, it
"Oh
talks
yeah."
about like Castro and then like the people coming from Cuba and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I forgot how that started too. There's another scene too where they get their first jobs and they're working in a like a small diner and they're like washing dishes and stuff. And they're like on their break and they're looking across the street like at this girl and um Tony's just like, man, he's like, what's that guy got that I ain't got? And man, he's like, well, he's really handsome, you know. Like that really made me laugh this time around. Uh,
You
it's
probably
like the chemistry between those two guys in this movie is really good, and like
mm-hmm.
the change of their relationship as the movie goes on, and how it
Yeah.
comes to a head. But I mean, we'll talk about that later. Uh, uh, there's some other things too. I talked about noticing things in this movie that you may have not noticed before. Um, there's a scene right before they go to pick up the drugs and to get the whole chainsaw scene.
Okay.
Uh, they walk by this like pink and teal apartment building or like hotel. I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% sure that that was the building used as the exterior shot for um the show Golden Palace,
Okay.
which was a show in the early 90s that was a spin-off of the Golden Girls where they like it was like Blanche Rose and Sophia um took over a hotel and were running it and like Don Cheadle and Cheech Marin were in it too.
Oh,
But I'm pretty sure that was the building because it looked exactly like that.
that's
And it's
funny.
just like a random thing. I was like, I wonder if anybody's ever noticed that watching this movie. Because I think Golden Palace was only on for one season. Uh, um, yes. Well, speaking of the chainsaw scene, was like one of the ones that like blew my mind the first time I saw this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So like
And
Manny and this other guy like sitting out in a car, and Tony and the one dude go to like hand over money, pick up drugs from this guy. The one dude like stays outside the apartment or hotel room or whatever to kind of like keep watch and make sure nothing crazy goes on. And Tony's talking to the guy and like his girlfriend or something, and they're both paranoid. Like, you got the money? Well, I don't have the money here. Do you got the drugs? It's like, well, I don't have those here, kind of thing. And then they like crap hits the fan, and the guy outside gets brought inside, and they like handcuff him in the shower, and the dude's trying to get him to like talk and hand over the money and stuff, and Tony refuses to do it. So like they freaking lop the guy's arm off and then his leg. And like you don't see everything, but you see like the blood splatter and like Tony's reaction and it's really effective.
well, they also like cut into his head though
Yeah.
first,
Yep.
which that was really well done because like you really get a sense for it
Hmm.
without them directly showing you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and just when they hang up Tony and try to get him to talk some more and he's not doing it, that's when Manny and the other guy like come to the rescue
mhm.
and they end up scooping up all the drugs, getting out of there, and that's how they get in good with Frank, and that thing's gonna take off from there. But that's one of the most memorable scenes of the movie.
Yeah, I didn't really yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of curious on what you think is the most like if somebody says the movie Scarface, like what scene comes to mind first? That
Well, the ending.
one, yeah, I figure most people would say the ending, but another one close to the top would definitely be that scene, the apartment scene with the chainsaw. So
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what was going on there. Like I know Tony says it later that he thinks that his that the one guy set him up.
Yeah.
But like what were the Colombians trying to like accomplish? Like if they brought the money, they were going to kill him and just keep the money.
Yeah.
But they said they didn't have the money, and so then he was thinking like by killing his friend that he would go get the money for them. I don't know, like I I didn't really completely understand because it's just like what you're going to let him go to go get the money then or what?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I'm not, I think it's a, well, obviously it was a whole intimidation thing. And it's like
Mm,
he was trying to get information from him or something, I thought. But
yeah.
like, if the whole thing was for the money, yeah, maybe you and I are just dumb and didn't catch on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean you are right. If he was trying to get information, that would make sense. If it wasn't just for the money though, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Oh man. Um, and then we get like some of some of the best quotes in this movie. You know, you mentioned the make the money first, and then you get the power, and then you know when you get the power, you get the women. That quote, is probably one of the most famous from it. There's another one too that I forgot about. Is the part where Tony says to Manny, he's like, "This whole town is just one big pussy waiting to get fucked."
Yeah.
Like that's another one I've seen mentioned before.
And then
Uh,
everybody a lot of people when we were talking about cribs, would use the world is yours and that whole
yeah,
tagline.
yeah. Um, the there's a scene too where Tony gets shot at in that club, and there's like that weird dude in a mask dancing around. I always remember that part too, just because it's so bizarre. And uh, these two guys like try to take Tony out. And they're obviously hired by Frank.
Yeah, well, besides that, worst hitman ever.
Right.
Like if they didn't even try being subtle about it, and then um they were shooting him from across the room, and it's just like, dude, if you're not gonna be subtle about it, and you're just gonna like stand up and shoot in front of everybody, get right next to him.
Yeah.
Make sure you're gonna kill him. Like,
Yeah. Like you couldn't have like got up to like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom or something, and then walk past him and then just waste him.
yeah.
No, let's shoot like 20 yards away, and then we're just gonna spray bullets everywhere with these Uzis.
Spray and pray.
Yeah. And then here, it's like you guys are great shots, like a couple of stormtroopers here. Um, and that leads, Tony to obviously realize it was Frank. He goes and confronts Frank about it, and it was like Frank and that cop were working together. Tony kills both of them, and uh, Tony like kills a couple other guys, and then he looks at this one guy who's like terrified, and he's like, "You want a job, Ernie?" And Ernie's like, sure, Tony." He's like, "Okay, you call me tomorrow." And then the other guy that was with Tony pats Ernie on the back is like, "Hey, you got a job."
I know, dude. I couldn't I could not remember exactly how that scene
Uh,
went down. Obviously, I knew Frank died, but I couldn't remember
yeah.
if the cop got killed, and then I definitely didn't know what happened to Ernie. So I was just like, "Oh man, what's what's gonna happen to the poor guy?"
Yeah, and all of this is like, his rise to power. And once he takes out Frank, he's kind of like the big wig in charge and everything. And that's when we get the awesome 80s montage
Hmm.
of all the money counting and like the drugs and everything. Um, and everything starts going. He gets busted by the cops, and he makes a deal with Sosa. Like he offers to help him if he can do a hit for him and like kill this journalist before he gets exposed on TV.
Hmm.
He decides he's gonna do that, and then we get like this dinner scene too, like this fancy restaurant. They have like a blow up fight, him and his wife,
Yeah.
and then Tony like goes off on this lunch speech, like uh, with all like these rich snooty people, and it ends with another famous line of "Say goodnight to the bad guy."
Yeah.
Um, that he's supposed to do this hit, and we get Mark Margolis,
Mhm.
the dude from Breaking Bad
Oh yeah.
that communicates with the bell. I figured you'd pick up on that.
Oh yeah.
Um, has to team up with him to go kill this journalist, and they like rigged a bomb under the guy's car, and him and Tony and another guy are like in the car waiting for this dude to get in there, and they're gonna follow him and blow him up in front of the embassy.
Hmm.
And that all changes when Tony sees like the guy's wife and kids get in the car with them, and he's like, "Wait," he's like, "I'm not here." He's like, "I'm here to waste this guy." He's like, "I'm not messing with no kids and his wife."
Hmm.
And he basically, he ends up shooting Mark Margolis, and he's like, "I don't mess around with that." He's like, "I'm not killing innocent people." Blah blah blah. And that's when that's basically brings on the end of Tony there because he's messing with Sosa, who's like uh huge like drug lord.
Yeah, like
And-
Sosa has like no rules because he's like outside America and like
yeah,
yeah.
and he controls so much. Um, and Tony's sister's like gone for a long time, and he's like trying to find where she's at. And he goes looking for Manny for help, and then he like goes to Manny's place, and his Tony's sister walks up like in a robe, and Tony like freaks out and shoots Manny, and he finds out that like Manny and Gina, his sister, like got married the day before, and they were gonna surprise him. And I
Yeah.
was just like, he's really gone off the deep end because he killed his best friend without thinking about it. And his sister's hysterical. And like, so they scoop her up and take her back to his mansion. And that's when like Sosa's guys start coming in at him.
Yeah, well, you didn't even mention that by that time too, his wife had left him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was that whole blow up fight they had at dinner. The say goodnight to the bad guy. That's basically the last time his wife even hangs around because he's
Yeah.
turning into such a jerk.
Hmm.
Well, she gets like super into coke too, and like he blames her for not being able to have kids.
Yeah. That's always a great conversation to
He-
have.
yeah, you're doing way too much of that junk, and you're barren or whatever. Like, yeah, yeah, what a great guy. Then like the gunfight starts happening. Gina gets shot, and then we get the most famous line from this movie. He pulls out the grenade launcher and says, "Say hello to my little friend," and blows the door of his office out.
Hmm.
And then like I forgot how many times he gets shot.
Yeah.
He's like standing at the top of the staircase and guys are just like unloading on him and he's just like screaming back at him. He's like, "That all you got?" kind of thing. It's like I'm still standing, and he ends up finally getting blown away from the back, and he falls into that uh pool at the bottom of the steps and the sign that says the world is yours.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the end of the movie. But I forgot how many times he got shot.
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
when you're like super crazy high on coke, then you might be kind of a Superman.
yeah, no, I remember them talking about that, or well, having that conversation previously about, oh, it seems so unrealistic. Then it's like, oh, well, you're on cocaine,
Yeah, he had
so
that huge mountain on his desk and just buries his whole face in it.
yeah. Okay, it might be reasonable. It might be real.
It turns out it was pretty realistic. Oh man. Anything else to cover?
Oh man, I mean, kind of watched through the movie and everything, but just like I don't know, even it's there are a lot of movies that will seem to kind of you usually see one of two things happen. They will either completely ignore the small details, like, small casual conversations like that scene that I said that kind of could have been eliminated.
Hmm.
Um, but it's a little bit of kind of, I don't know if I would say character development, but you get to know more about the characters and understand them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, you'll have movies that will either completely ignore those things or they will like almost take them too far.
Yeah.
And this movie just did a really good, like, just an excellent job throughout the whole thing about not wasting time.
Hmm.
Like, when they would do those things, they would do it with a purpose and then they would um, be effective. And so, just it, like, top to bottom, just so well done. I mean, there were so many things where I was thinking in this movie, like, I mean, these are just like personal things. It's not even like that the movie was bad, but when you were talking about like they had the hit on that journalist guy and then instead he killed the hitman.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, why didn't you just drive away and then try to kill him a different way later on in the day or something, you know?
Because he's high
Um,
on coke and he's impulsive and insane.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, he was. I couldn't remember if they showed him doing drugs, but chances are at that point of stuff, he was just on drugs the whole time. So, but no, it just, it, I can't. And another thing to think about too is this movie is not only a 2 hour and 45 minute movie; it's a 2 hour and 45 minute movie from the '80s,
Yeah.
and so that did not happen as much back then.
Hmm.
And so for them to do it as effectively as they did is all the more impressive, honestly, to me.
Yeah, it's
So,
like the long run times were more saved for epic movies back then,
mhm.
unlike now where the movie Terrifier 2 can be 2.5 hours long
Yeah,
for whatever reason. But yeah, it definitely stands out. Um, yeah, some of the like you said, the attention to detail and the small things and the building of the characters, I think, is really where this movie shines. Like I mentioned, the chemistry between Manny and Tony, and then Tony's like dive into madness. This is really like a big character study.
oh
We've
yeah,
talked about it before with, Christmas Evil and Fade to Black. Um, but yeah, this one is really part of that too. And just like, it starts off as like he's an aggressive guy, but he's sensible and like we said, like almost likable at the beginning. And then he turns into like an impulsive, paranoid lunatic at the end.
yeah, totally unhinged.
Yeah. And it all literally blows up. So, yeah. Um, anything else? You want me to get trivia and facts?
Trivia and facts.
All right. So during the scene where Tony and Elvira are sitting in the Cadillac at the car dealership, um, Al Pacino slips on a hat that Michelle Pfeiffer was wearing while she was looking away, which was not scripted. When she turns back and sees him wearing it, her amused reaction was genuine. And to her credit, she stayed in character and ad-libbed the line. Brian De Palma decided to keep that unscripted exchange in the movie to show Elvira's gradual warming up to Tony.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that worked out pretty well because I actually honestly, like, up to that whole until then Tony was saying, "Oh, she likes me," but honestly, like, the whole time you're kind of like, that's kind of questionable.
Yeah. Uh, so Tony Montana uses the word yayo, which is slang for cocaine. Al Pacino actually learned that word while he was learning a Cuban accent, and he ad-libbed it during the chainsaw scene. De Palma liked it enough that he kept enough that he like kept using it throughout the film.
Hmm.
Stephen Bauer got his role without even auditioning. During the audition process, casting director Alex Gordon saw Bauer and instantly noted that he was right for the role of Manny, a judgment with which both Brian De Palma and Martin Bergman agreed.
Rock.
Yeah. So when Scarface was re-released in cinemas in 2003, the studio wanted Brian De Palma to change the soundtrack so that rap songs inspired by the film could be used, and he flat out refused. And that was a
Mm.
very good decision.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. The prop firearms were equipped with electronic synchronizing devices so that they would only fire when the camera shutter was open.
Oh,
The result was that the gun's muzzle flashes are much more noticeable and consistent than in most films.
wait. That what does that have to do with that's a little confusing on what that has to do with like the camera like I think I get it. I think I get it.
Yeah,
I was just kind of like, shouldn't it just be able to go whenever? But it's got it. Had to
yeah.
process that one because yeah, older filming.
Yep. Um, but there's a long been a myth that Pacino snorted real cocaine on camera. The cocaine that was used in the film was supposedly powdered milk. Um, but whatever it was, it created problems for Pacino's nasal passages.
I
He
bet.
quoted that for years after I had things up in there, and he's like, and in 2015 he said, "I don't know what happened to my nose, but it has changed." Yeah,
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. I mean, have you ever had anything go up your nose?
no,
Yeah, no, I mean, like
other
I've
than
had a
water.
yeah, I've had a few things, and so it's just like I can't imagine doing anything on a kind of somewhat regular basis because no
Yeah,
matter what it is, it's gonna cause problems.
yeah. So in the scene where Tony is in the bathtub watching TV, he says to Manny, "Look at them pelicans fly." Um, this this line was what Al Pacino practiced with a language coach to get the Cuban accent right. And if you look at the screen, it was flamingos.
Yeah, which nobody corrected him on.
Yeah. So Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma have been friends since the two began making studio films in the mid 70s, and they had a habit of visiting each other's sets. Spielberg was on hand for one of the days of shooting the Colombians' initial attack on Tony's house at the end of the movie. So De Palma let Spielberg direct the low angle shot where the attackers first enter the house.
Hmm.
Al Pacino reportedly stated that Tony Montana was one of his favorite characters of all time that he has played.
Rock.
To help stay in character, Pacino asked the director of photography, John Alonzo, to speak to him only in Spanish.
Hmm. Okay.
So Tammy Lynn Leppert, who played the blonde girl in the blue bikini during the chainsaw sequence, she disappeared on the 6th of July in 1983 under suspicious circumstances and has never been heard from again. While working on the movie, Leppert had a breakdown on the set while watching a violent scene. After being taken from her trailer, she expressed to a family and friend her fears about alleged money laundering and people supposedly wanting to kill her. She quit the film shortly afterwards and vanished on the 6th, slightly over 5 months before the movie was released in the theaters. Leper's disappearance was featured in episode 5.1 on September 1992. Apparently, episode number 5.1 was a TV show.
Oh.
Uh,
Hmm.
Tammy's mother was interviewed for the segment. She died a few years later, but Tammy's sister is still searching for her. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's weird how people can just like vanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alejandro Sosa is based on Robert Suarez, who was a real-life Bolivian drug lord and trafficker who played a major role in the expansion of cocaine trafficking in Bolivia. Miriam Colon, who plays Tony's mom, is actually only 4 years older than Al Pacino.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah. Brian De Palma liked the script so much that he dropped out of directing the movie Flashdance to make this movie.
Good choice.
Yeah. The film is dedicated to Ben Hecht and Howard Hawks, the writer and director of the original Scarface. Brian De Palma's Scarface is a loose remake of that 1932 movie, which is also about the rise and fall of an American immigrant
Hmm.
gangster who the producer in 1983 version, Martin Brigman, saw the original on late night TV and thought the idea could be modernized and still pay respect to the original film. De Palma's movie dedicated the original film director, who was Howard Hawks, and the screenwriter, who was Ben Hecht.
Rock.
Al Pacino wanted Glenn Close to play Elvira, but the producers didn't think that she was sexy enough to do it. Ouch.
Ouch.
Al Pacino used Meryl Streep's portrayal of an immigrant in the movie Sophie's Choice as an inspiration for his portrayal of Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
At first, Michelle Pfeiffer was not strongly considered for Elvira, as she was still an unknown actress. Universal's parent company, MCA, favored big name stars like Jane Fonda, Goldie Hawn, Barbra Streisand, Lucy Arnaz, Susan Blakely, Stockard Channing, Beverly D'Angelo, Mary Lou Henner, Margot Kidder, Jennifer O'Neill, Priscilla Presley, Teresa O'Neill, Raquel Welch, and Jo Beth Williams were all considered, but Pfeiffer was cast after her first meeting with Brian De Palma.
Rock.
Not sure any of those would be a good decision. Maybe Beverly D'Angelo, I could see doing it. But, this movie had a $50 million budget and it made 66 million in the box office. So it wasn't a huge success.
No. But over time, it's
Yeah, I
made.
heard it was kind of panned by critics. I think it because it was so violent and there was a lot of swearing in it.
A
And at the
little
time,
bit.
like that wasn't really the thing.
Yeah.
But
It was.
we can get into grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think they are?
IMDb 8.1.
8.3.
Ooh. It's been a while since we got an well, actually no. We've had a few. Rotten Tomato critic, mm, 92.
79.
Ooh, whoa, weird. Audience 92?
93.
Okay.
And in the rap community, 100.
110.
Yeah,
Crank it up
put
to
it on in the
11.
background. Uh, our grades. I guess I'll go first.
Rock.
Like I said, I've seen this movie quite a few times. It always kind of like surprises me how good it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it really surprises me that it didn't really make much money. Usually to be considered a success, a movie has to make back like twice its money, twice
Okay.
its budget. I mean, being a $50 million movie in 1983, it was kind of a steep thing to ask, but the acting is really good. The pacing of it is good, even though it's almost 3 hours. Soundtrack's good. Cinematography's great. Um, the direction and everything really good. And it's one of those, I feel like one of those seminal movies of the 80s
Mm-hmm.
and one of the best gangster movies ever. So I ended up giving it 5 out of 5. I couldn't really give it anything less.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm right there with you because, like I was saying at the beginning of this movie or beginning of this episode, I can't really think of anything that I could say that would make this movie better because I mean, usually when you're at a movie that's as long as this is, you're kind of like, oh, well, maybe it should be shorter. But really, I mean, that's kind of splitting hairs at that point. And it just, everything built to honestly, they probably could have made it longer
Yeah,
to give you some more substance and more clear information of what happened
I'm
because
sure
they
there's a
did the
director's cut somewhere.
yeah because they did the whole montage thing, and it's just like they could have gone into more depth with some of those details there. But I mean, I'm glad they didn't. I think what they did was great, and it's kind of me looking at it and being like, dang, I feel like I should watch this movie more often with how good it is. I mean, everything top to bottom, great performances by everyone. I mean, outstanding performances by a few people, especially Al Pacino, and just fun and entertaining in general. So,
Yeah. Yeah, this is before Al Pacino just started shouting everything. Oh man. Yeah, I thought it was a good movie to really wrap up the cult movie month. Um,
I didn't realize that it technically would fall into being a cult movie.
yeah, I think because, it didn't do that great in the box office and it's got a big fan base behind it.
Hmm.
And I think because the critic response initially wasn't very good for it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of fans to this movie, so I felt like it fit pretty good. Um, so next month we're gonna be going back to sports movies because it's gonna be Sports Timber again. We got a interesting lineup here. One that the rewatchables literally just did, and that's Rudy is gonna be our next movie. And
Rock.
I thought that only fit with football season starting off again. We start with that. And then we're going to be doing D3, The Mighty Ducks. I mean, it's only right that we finish out the trilogy. Then we got Gridiron Gang, and then Major League, which is an all-time classic.
Oh yeah.
But if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. Follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. Go check out our YouTube. We got lots of shorts on there. I've been putting up the new and older episodes, and I got Slasher Quest, which is a little sideshow that I do on there. That's all about slasher movies. So if you guys are gearing up for the Halloween season, you can check that out. And come by next time. We're going to be talking about Rudy and getting into Sports Timber. But until then, as always, be kind and rewind.